All right. How's the microphone? Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming down into the basement for the presentation. So I have 15 minutes, and the title of this presentation is Bitcoin's Value Proposition. This is an hour-plus presentation, so we're going to literally skip to the end of it. And but those of you that don't know who I am, just Google me, YouTube, a couple of conferences, Unconfiscatable, Understanding Bitcoin. One's in Vegas, one is in Malta. That is the price history of Bitcoin minus the last 6 months, which have gotten out of control and are now sitting up there near 13,000. I got to update the background of this presentation. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to skip to the middle. This basically goes through all of the use cases of Bitcoin, and we're just going to go straight to the summary, and I'll be able to cover it there. And but because I do want to focus on the last few slides, which is something I rarely get to even in this 1 hour presentation. Oh, it's one of my favorite slides, actually. It's, I thought this was the main reason why Bitcoin got out of the last bear market, or centered around the Greek banking crisis. And here we go. So here's the summary of Bitcoin's value proposition. So I just saved you guys about 30 minutes of time. Bitcoin has 3 very important properties that allow it to compete today with the traditional fiat currencies. And to me, they are actually listed in order. The first one is unconfiscatable. And I recognize this property with what happened out in Cyprus when the money was confiscated out of people's bank accounts. For the first time in human history, you can own something of value that is unconfiscatable by someone with a bigger gun. The second property of Bitcoin that allows it to compete very well is the fact that it's censorship-resistant value transfer. That is actually independent of Bitcoin being unconfiscatable. That has to do with the Bitcoin payment, Bitcoin being its own payment network. And we saw that with WikiLeaks and Silk Road, and when Greece prevented people from taking money out of their accounts. The third property is the fact that Bitcoin is uninflatable, and that was the monetary policy that Satoshi chose for Bitcoin. He chose it in the form of gold so that Bitcoin is a deflationary asset, and it's harder money than gold. With those of you that have read Saifedean's book, has an amazing stock-to-flow ratio that is about to become smaller than gold in about 1.5 years. And it does create that hard money aspect. Now, where does Bitcoin still, needs to get a little bit better in order to compete? And that is scalability and fungibility privacy. Now, these things are getting significantly better. When I made this presentation originally, this was over 1 year ago. We've gotten a long way. People are starting to use Batch32 native SegWit. Lightning Network is becoming very popular. Those of you that were playing the video games in the arcades around here, things are moving well. Still got to get Schnorr in, still got to get Bulletproofs in. There will be, right after me, there'll be a presentation about Wasabi Wallet. So fungibility and privacy are improving, and probably within 1 year or 2, those elements would be set. However, actually, we can just skip those. Well, it's a nice list. It's an article I wrote about 3 or 4 years ago now of the use cases of Bitcoin, if you want to glance at that. Now, where does Bitcoin still struggle? Bitcoin still struggles with price volatility, even right now. I mean, we're watching an unprecedented rise in the price of Bitcoin. I think we're rising faster right now than at the end of 2017. And I think it's going to end just as badly as 2017. Now, the volatility in general is not good. Even if it's mostly to the upside over time, it still makes it very difficult to use Bitcoin as a currency. Nothing we can do about this. You just have to give it time. When there's more value on chain, when a Bitcoin is more valuable than the small transactions, will not be volatile at all. And of course, coin security. Let me skip these. These are just volatility charts. And Bitcoin's volatility is bad, but it's not as bad as this giant list of hyperinflations that have taken place in the 20th century. Okay? And this book ended them with Zimbabwe in 2007. So all the stuff in blue is the ones that I found since 2007, instances of hyperinflation, which is a 50% devaluation of your currency in a single month. Venezuela is being the biggest one, but also Ukraine and Russia and Turkish lira as the Venezuelan currency. And these are single one-day shocks of when the British pound, when they had Brexit, British pound moves 10% in a day. When Swiss lost their peg, that moved 30% in a single day. Even Bitcoin doesn't move 30% in a single day yet or anymore. And coin security. Coin security is a big struggle because people are still getting hacked. Binance printed $1 billion for themselves and they still can't prevent the hack. So coin security is always a challenge. So what will take Bitcoin to the next level? I think economic shocks. If something like the euro breaks up back into its components, that would create a huge use case for Bitcoin. The continued efforts of governments to eliminate cash. This is a good study by Harvard Business Review on why governments want to eliminate cash. They don't want people having a bank run. They don't want people running to the ATM machines. There's no ATM machines if there's no cash. They all think we're tax evaders, so they want to watch all of our transactions. Those that saw Edward Snowden's speech earlier heard all about that, how they're monitoring everybody's transactions. And also, they want to give us negative interest rates so they can control how much money we spend. These are, well, this one is out of the US. Louisiana passed a law that you can't sell secondhand goods for cash. You have to take a check or a credit card to sell your bicycle at a garage sale. And Germany is going after the collector's market. Anything worth over €100 needs to be registered. I love this tweet by Giacomo Zucco. Bitcoin maximalism, also known as moderate common sense, that Bitcoin may succeed because here are the other two extremes. The no-coiner like a Nouriel Roubini, who thinks that not even Bitcoin can succeed, and the multi-coiner like a Vitalik Buterin or anyone else that created or believes in an altcoin, that Bitcoin is very, very trivial and it can easily be replaced. And speaking of that, this is what I want to spend my final 5 minutes on. I put together, I really wanted this as a 3-Venn diagram of all of the shitcoins in existence, but it ended up having to be a 4-Venn diagram, and this is how I separated them. You have your blockchains or your decentralized ledger databases. You also have your ICOs and airdrops. You have the proof of work coins, and you have the proof of stake and proof of God knows what else. Proof of importance in the case of NEM, proof of other, and anyway, a bunch of other nonsense. And of course, not everything fits directly into a box, which is why you have these things. So you have, Litecoin and Monero are just regular proof of work. Then you have things like Dash and Zcash and Decred. They're on the border because they're private corporations that are taking money off the miners to pay their developers and other investors. Then of course you have R3 and Hyperledger. They don't have a token. So they are just what people think a blockchain is, which it's not. You need proof of work for that. But if you believe R3 and Hyperledger to be blockchains, at least they don't have any tokens, which is what separates them from Ripple, that printed $100 billion for themselves. And then you have numerous ICOs, Augur being one of the first. And then you have your database layers that did have an ICO, and then either a proof of stake or a proof of work. And these are your Ethereums, your EOS. Now the scammiest parts are, the scammiest tokens of them all are the ones that have an ICO and then immediately go into proof of stake, right? So you printed a bunch of tokens, and then the more tokens you gave to your friends and held on to, you instantly making more tokens from holding the tokens. These are like your token pay and others. So let's stick with the ones that people think are actually competitors to Bitcoin. This is your Litecoin and your Monero. Well, that's just the definition of a blockchain and where it came from. It came from the main code file where right in the code Satoshi wrote, when they solve proof of work, they broadcast the block to everyone, and the block is added to the blockchain. The blockchain was never mentioned in the Satoshi white paper, so the word basically just came out of the code. People have to realize what makes Bitcoin different and special. What makes Bitcoin different, and no altcoin, no new project, it doesn't matter if it's Beam or Grin or anything else utilizing the latest privacy technology, or it can give us 8 billion transactions a second. None of that really matters, because what makes Bitcoin unique is simply the fact that you cannot replicate the first 2 years of Bitcoin's existence. Because the people that helped create Bitcoin, or if Satoshi was one person, relied on other people's work. Let me read you something from an email. This is an email from 2001. I'm going to read the parts in bold. Personally, I like the idea of Hashcash, if and only if it was structured like a real currency as opposed to simply proof of work. In the real world, you pay for resources used. In many cases, this should also apply to peer-to-peer and other computer systems. Of course, getting Hashcash workable as a real currency is extremely difficult. I've thought of a scheme that would work. Coins are signed by owner and can only be transferred, signed to a different owner by the owner. Except you need a decentralized central database of all the Hashcash that's been minted. Unworkable. Shit. Spend twice problem. Who wrote that email in 2001? That was actually Peter Todd when he was 15 years old on a Saturday afternoon, right? So you have to, and in a conversation with Hal Finney, okay? So when someone shows up, like yesterday, and says, I solved all of Bitcoin's problems, ask them what they were doing at 15 years old on a Saturday, right? And if they were already trying to create proof of work in order to solve these problems. So that's what makes Bitcoin different. Now, no, well, we're going to skip the mining part. Now, let's talk about, everyone keeps talking about how Litecoin is useful and how it's the silver to Bitcoin's gold. Now, that is not true, and here's a passage from Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, which I'm assuming most of you have read. By the 19th century, however, with development of modern banking and the improvement in methods of communication, individuals could transact with paper money and checks backed by gold in the treasuries of the banks and central banks. This made gold-backed transactions possible at any scale, thus obviating the need for silver's monetary role and gathering all essential monetary salability properties in the gold standard. Basically what this says is with modern technology, you no longer needed silver as a micropayment to gold. And that is exactly what's happening with silver now. Silver to gold price ratio is at an all-time high. Gold has started to break out. Silver isn't going anywhere. It took a little while, but people are starting to realize that silver has no more monetary properties. Because even if the world does go back to the hard money standard, silver will be useless. You can use gold at any micropayment price. That's also the problem that Litecoin has and any other altcoin that tells you that it's needed. Bitcoin will scale with Lightning, and therefore you're not going to need an alternative currency, and that's why all of these altcoins will not have any value as a store of value, and there will be absolutely no need to use them. Now, Luke Dash Jr. explained it really, really well back in 2013, where he said, Litecoin and other scam coins like it, on the other hand, do not bring anything new to the table. They are just mere clones that retain the pump and dump nature of Bitcoin, but without the innovation that makes Bitcoin viable as a currency. And he explained the three differences that Litecoin did. They changed the mining algorithm to script, which didn't really make a difference. They have faster block time, but the security isn't faster, so that also doesn't matter. And they created a bunch of tokens, 84 million tokens instead of 21. And if you break down Bitcoin into micro Bitcoin, you already have more micro Bitcoin than you have Litecoin. Now, Monero has similar problems, but for different reasons. Now that privacy solutions are coming into Bitcoin, Monero is going to have the same problem, and Monero is also in competition with other privacy-related coins. The Liquid sidechain is going to take out all of those database layers, like Ethereum and EOS, and do it on a more secure base. I'm going to turn this into a full presentation for the next Bitcoin Maximalist Focus Conference at BitBlock Boom, and I'll highlight more reasons as to why Bitcoin will continue to appreciate against the altcoins like it has been over the last few months, and I think that trend is going to move on. If Bitcoin does correct in price like I expect altcoins to fall a lot more, and the next time Bitcoin rises, I expect the altcoins to rise a lot less in price. That's kind of my view on it. I'm already over on my time. Thank you so much, guys, and I'm still around the rest of the day.